The cold reaches you before you even open your eyes. Your breath hangs in the darkness like smoke. The wool around your body is stiff with frost. Your fingers ache inside your gloves. And somewhere beyond the wooden walls, the wind is screaming through a forest buried beneath snow. You have not seen the sun yet, but the trumpet is already calling you to your feet. Outside, the temperature is below freezing. Snow covers the roads, the rooftops, and the defensive walls. Your armor feels like ice against your body. In a few hours, you may be standing motionless on guard duty, marching through knee-deep snow, or training with weapons while every breath burns your lungs. And you are hundreds of miles from the warmth of the Mediterranean. This was winter on Rome's northern frontier. For Rome's enemies, the cold seemed like the perfect weapon. They did not need to destroy an entire legion in battle. They only had to wait for hunger, frostbite, disease, and exhaustion to do the killing for them. But something unexpected happened. The Roman legions did not disappear when winter arrived. They built fortified camps in the snow. They heated buildings without modern technology. They changed the way they dressed, stockpiled enormous quantities of food and firewood, treated the sick, repaired their weapons, and continued training. So how did thousands of Roman soldiers survive months in conditions that could kill an unprepared army? The answer reveals one of Rome's greatest weapons. And it wasn't the sword, it was preparation. Before a Roman legion could survive winter, it first had to build a world capable of keeping winter outside. These were known as castra hibernath, winter quarters of the Roman army. Unlike temporary marching camps, they were designed to support thousands of soldiers for months in hostile conditions. And choosing where to build one was never left to chance. Reconnaissance teams moved ahead of the legion, searching for firm, elevated ground that could be defended easily. Fresh water had to be nearby. Just as important were forests, because timber meant walls, roofs, repairs, and above all, fuel. A poor location could become a death sentence once the snow began to fall. Then the legion arrived. Thousands of soldiers went to work with a level of organization that made Roman military engineering so effective. The camp followed a familiar layout: defensive ditches and palisades around the perimeter, roads running through the interior, headquarters near the center, storage buildings, workshops, medical facilities, and rows of barracks for the men. For a legionary, that standardization mattered. Whether he was stationed in Britannia, along the Rhine, or near the Danube, the basic logic of the camp remained familiar. He knew where to go, where supplies were kept, and what his responsibilities were. Winter barracks also had to be stronger than ordinary field shelters. Thick timber construction helped resist the weather. Walls could be insulated with materials such as clay or straw, while sloping roofs reduced the dangerous accumulation of snow. Even the outer defenses helped with survival. Palisades and other structures could reduce the force of the freezing wind sweeping through the camp. Within a remarkably short time, an exposed patch of frontier could become something completely different: a fortified military settlement built to endure. Rome did not simply find shelter from winter. It engineered one.
We need more timber if this fire
But
is gonna
walls
last
alone
long.
could not keep a legion alive. Once the camp was built, Rome faced another problem. How do you keep thousands of men warm when the temperature stays below freezing for days? The simplest answer was also the most important: fire. Inside the barracks, fires and braziers provided precious heat through the long winter nights. Keeping them burning required an enormous and continuous supply of fuel. Soldiers and dedicated parties gathered timber from the surrounding forests,
Hold it, soldier.
while charcoal could be used where a hotter fire with less smoke was needed. firewood was not treated as a luxury. In winter, it was a military resource as essential as food. In more permanent Roman installations, however, the solution could become far more sophisticated. Some buildings used the hypocaust, a heating system most famously associated with Roman baths. The floor was raised above small supports, creating an empty space beneath it. A furnace produced hot air that circulated under the floor and, in some structures, through channels in the walls. Instead of relying entirely on a single fire in the middle of a room, heat could spread through the building from below. For a soldier returning from hours of duty in freezing wind, that difference must have felt enormous. But Roman heating came with risks. Barracks heated by open fires or braziers could become smoky, especially when ventilation was poor. Warmth might mean breathing dirty air through the night. And there was another problem: scale. A legion could contain around 5,000 men, with additional personnel and animals nearby. Keeping such a community warm required staggering quantities of fuel. Forests around long-term camps could be heavily exploited simply to keep fires burning. Winter survival, therefore, depended on more than discovering clever heating technology. Someone had to cut the wood, transport it, store it, protect it, and make sure it was available every single night. Because when the fire went out, winter came straight through the wall. But eventually, every legionary had to leave the warmth of the barracks. And this is where the popular image of the Roman soldier begins to fall apart. We often picture him wearing a short tunic, metal armor, bare legs, and open leather sandals. That image works beneath the Mediterranean sun. On the frozen frontiers of Britannia, the Rhine, or the Danube, it could become dangerously impractical. Roman soldiers adapted by layering their clothing. Wool was especially valuable because it provided insulation and could still retain warmth when damp. In severe cold, a legionary could wear multiple tunics beneath his equipment, creating layers that trapped warm air close to the body. Around the neck was the focale, a woolen scarf that protected exposed skin from freezing wind while also reducing irritation from armor. Beneath the metal armor, padded clothing provided another barrier between the soldier and iron that could become painfully cold. Then there were trousers. To traditional Romans, trousers or braccae had long been associated with foreign peoples, such as Gauls and other northern barbarians. They were hardly the image of a civilized Roman citizen. But military necessity has a way of destroying fashion rules. Along the colder frontiers, practicality won. Covering the legs simply made sense. The same happened with footwear. The famous open caligae were not ideal for deep snow and freezing mud. Soldiers could use woolen socks, while enclosed leather footwear offered greater protection in harsh conditions. Finally came the heavy military cloak, wrapped around the body against wind and snow. In extreme regions, animal hides could provide even more insulation. So the Roman soldier standing guard in a snowstorm looked very different from the legionary of popular imagination. Rome had learned a simple lesson: tradition could be sacrificed. Warmth could not. And keeping a soldier warm was only the beginning, because surviving winter also required feeding. And keeping a soldier warm was only the beginning because surviving winter also required feeding him. Cold changes the body's demands. A man marching through snow, repairing fortifications, carrying equipment, or standing watch for hours needed a constant supply of energy. For Rome, feeding thousands of such men on a frozen frontier was not simply a matter of cooking dinner. It was a logistical operation. At the center of the legionary diet was grain, especially wheat. It could be turned into bread or cooked into a thick porridge, providing the carbohydrates soldiers needed for exhausting daily work. In winter camps, communal ovens could produce bread for large numbers of men, while legumes, olive oil, and other stored foods added more calories to the ration. Meat also had an important place. Archaeological evidence from frontier forts shows that Roman soldiers consumed pork, beef, mutton, and sometimes game. The cold itself could even help preserve slaughtered meat for longer than during warmer months. Then there was wine. Wine was already part of Roman military life, but during cold weather, it could be served warm and mixed with ingredients such as honey or spices. Imagine coming off a freezing night watch, unable to feel your fingers, and being handed a warm drink inside the barracks. It was calories, comfort, and morale in the same cup. But the real Roman achievement happened before any of this food reached a soldier. Winter could bury roads beneath snow, turn routes into mud, and isolate frontier positions. Rome could not assume that supply wagons would arrive whenever something ran low, so military stores had to be filled in advance. Granaries held carefully protected reserves of grain. Wine, oil, salt, and other supplies were accumulated before severe weather arrived. Storage buildings were designed to keep food away from damp ground and pests. This changed the nature of winter warfare. An army that depended on daily foraging could become desperate when the landscape froze. A Roman legion with months of supplies already behind its walls could wait, and that may have been Rome's greatest winter advantage. The battle against hunger was often won before the first snow ever fell. But Rome did something even more surprising. With the soldiers it had kept sheltered, warm, and fed, it sent them back out into the snow to train. And then came the part that would have shocked many of Rome's enemies. The soldiers kept training. Winter was not treated as a season when the legion could simply hide behind its walls and wait for spring. A soldier who spent months doing nothing would lose strength, endurance, and the instinctive discipline that made Roman formations so dangerous. Rome wanted its men ready to fight the moment they were needed, regardless of the weather. So even when snow covered the ground, legionaries marched. They ran, carried heavy equipment, practiced formations, and drilled with weapons. Training swords and shields could be heavier than the real equipment, forcing soldiers to work harder during practice so that actual combat weapons felt faster and easier to control. Imagine trying to maintain formation while your boots slipped on frozen ground, your hands were numb, and icy wind struck your face. That discomfort was part of the lesson. A formation had to remain intact even when conditions were terrible. Training was only one part of the winter routine. The camp itself demanded constant work. Snow had to be cleared from roofs before its weight damaged buildings. Palisades needed repairs. Drainage channels had to remain open. Armor and weapons required constant maintenance because winter moisture could quickly attack iron with rust. And then there was guard duty. While other men slept near the fire, someone had to stand on the walls in darkness, watching the frozen landscape beyond the camp. Remaining awake and alert for hours in bitter cold could be as much a psychological test as a physical one. Discipline did not disappear because the temperature dropped. Neglecting a post could endanger hundreds or thousands of men. That was the Roman principle in its harshest form. Winter was not an excuse to become weaker. It was another environment in which a legion had to remain a legion. But no amount of discipline could make a human body invincible. And inside those crowded winter camps, another enemy was always waiting: disease. But no amount of discipline could make a human body invincible. And inside those crowded winter camps, another enemy was always waiting: disease. Cold was dangerous, but it was rarely alone. A soldier exposed to freezing wind could suffer frostbite or hypothermia. Ice made falls and broken bones more common. Contaminated water could bring gastrointestinal illness. And when 8 men slept together in a confined barrack, breathing smoky air night after night, respiratory infections could spread quickly. Rome could not eliminate these dangers. But it had something many ancient armies lacked: an organized military medical system. Permanent forts could include a valetudinarium military hospital built specifically to treat sick and wounded soldiers. These were not simply tents where injured men were left to recover. Some were carefully planned structures with separate rooms, corridors, sanitation facilities, and spaces where military doctors could work. Those doctors, known as medici, faced a very different battlefield during winter. A frostbitten hand could end a soldier's usefulness just as effectively as a sword wound. Ancient Roman medical writers described gradual warming and gentle treatment of cold-damaged extremities rather than violently heating them. Oils could be applied to skin exposed to bitter wind and dry air. Vinegar was also used in cleaning and medical practices, while sick soldiers could be separated from healthier men. Then there were the baths. Even on distant frontiers, Roman military communities invested enormous effort in bathing facilities. Hot baths offered more than comfort after a freezing day. Regular washing helped maintain hygiene in an environment where thousands of men lived close together. It also gave soldiers opportunities to notice wounds, skin problems, parasites, or early signs of cold injury before they became more serious. Archaeologists have even uncovered specialized Roman surgical instruments at military cystoscalpels, forceps, probes, and scissors, evidence that medical treatment was a routine part of army life. Still, imagine the reality. Outside, snow covers the walls. Inside, fires fill the barracks with smoke. Men cough in the darkness. Somewhere nearby, doctors are treating frostbite, fever, and injuries while the next watch prepares to go outside. Rome could not stop winter from hurting its soldiers. What it could do was keep enough of them healthy enough to fight. And that brings us to the real reason winter never became the weapon Rome's enemies hoped it would be. And that brings us to the real reason winter never became the weapon Rome's enemies hoped it would be. The secret was not one invention. It was the system. Think about everything that had to work together before a single legionary could stand on a frozen frontier. Engineers selected and fortified the camp. Soldiers cut timber and kept the fires burning. Supply officers filled granaries before the roads disappeared beneath snow. Clothing protected the body. Blacksmiths kept weapons usable. Doctors treated the sick. And every day, discipline kept thousands of men following the same routine. Remove one part, and the entire system became weaker. Without fuel, the barracks froze. Without stored grain, hunger arrived. Without maintenance, weapons rusted and buildings deteriorated. Without training, formations lost their precision. Without sanitation and medical care, illness could spread through crowded quarters. But when all of those pieces worked together, winter changed. For Rome's enemies, the cold could force warriors to reduce operations, scatter in search of supplies, or wait for better weather. A Roman legion positioned inside a prepared winter base had another option: remain organized. That did not mean Roman soldiers were comfortable. They still froze on night watch. They still became sick. They still suffered from wet clothing, smoke-filled rooms, exhaustion, and frostbite. winter remained brutal. The difference was that Rome had built institutions designed to absorb that brutality. And this created a strategic advantage far greater than simply keeping men alive. An army that could remain supplied, disciplined, and ready through winter could protect territory when enemies expected weakness. It could react to threats. It could begin operations without rebuilding itself from nothing when the weather improved. The legionary's greatest winter weapon, then, was not the gladius hanging at his side. It was preparation. Rome fought the cold with roads, warehouses, timber, wool, furnaces, engineers, doctors, and relentless organization. So return for a moment to that frozen soldier from the beginning. He stands on the wall while snow falls around him, staring into the dark forest beyond the palisade. He is cold. He is tired. But behind him, the entire machinery of Rome is still working. And that is why the winter has not defeated him. So when we picture a Roman legionary standing in the snow, we should not imagine a superhuman soldier who simply ignored the cold. He felt it. His fingers went numb. His clothes became wet. His breath froze in the air. He stood through exhausting night watches, slept in crowded barracks, inhaled smoke from the fires, and woke knowing that the same freezing world was waiting outside. What made him dangerous was everything behind him. A fortified camp protected him from the wind. Timber and charcoal kept fires alive. Wool, boots, cloaks, and layers protected his body. Granaries held months of food. Engineers repaired the walls. Blacksmiths maintained his weapons. Doctors treated the sick. And relentless training ensured that when spring arrived or when an enemy appeared before, the legion was still ready. That may be one of the most important reasons Rome held distant frontiers for centuries. The empire did not defeat winter by being stronger than nature. It defeated winter by preparing for it. And perhaps that is the most impressive thing about the Roman military machine. Long before the first snowflake touched the ground, Rome was already fighting the winter, and in many cases, it had already won. Now imagine spending just 1 week in that frozen frontier camp. What would be hardest for you? The freezing night watch, the smoke-filled barracks, the endless training, or simply knowing an enemy could be waiting beyond the walls? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories that reveal what life inside the Roman military was really like, subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because the next chapter of Rome may be even more brutal.